Have you ever been pushed out of the very thing you spent your life building? 17 years. Thousands of sleepless nights. Keeping the wheels turning while no one even noticed, until the day they decided I was no longer needed. My name is Ethan Carter, and for almost 2 decades, I was the silent force behind Meridian Technologies. No headlines. No applause. Just systems that never crashed, servers that never failed, and a network so stable it felt invisible, because I made it that way. And then, one ordinary Monday, they thought they could erase me with a single piece of paper. What they didn't realize was, in those 17 years, I didn't just build their infrastructure. I built safeguards, hidden blueprints, and a roadmap, one that only I understood. The day they fired me, they didn't just lose an employee. They unleashed a storm they weren't prepared for. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about loyalty, betrayal, and the quiet power of the people everyone underestimates. Buckle up. Because the real story, the one they never saw coming, is just getting started. When I first joined Meridian Technologies, we were just a scrappy little company tucked inside a 2-story business park on the edge of Columbus. There were no shiny office buildings back then, no glossy marketing campaigns, just a handful of people trying to make outdated systems work a little longer than they should. I wasn't some tech superstar. I was just a guy who loved solving problems, who believed that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, and kept your head down, good things would follow. I stayed through 3 CEOs, 5 office moves, and countless nights where I was the only light burning in the server room. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, school plays, always telling myself it was temporary, that loyalty would be rewarded when the time came. The reality? Loyalty is only valued by people who recognize its worth. And sometimes, the very people you trust the most are the first to forget. One moment sticks in my mind. 5 years ago, when the system crashed right before a major product launch, and it was my custom patches, built in the shadows, without any fanfare, that saved the entire company from disaster. No award. No bonus. Just a quick nod in a Monday meeting before moving on to the next fire. And still, I stayed. Because sometimes, you don't build systems for applause, you build them because it's the right thing to do. But now, standing outside that office building with my box of memories, I realized something important. Loyalty is powerful, but only when it's given to people who deserve it. And the people inside those walls? They hadn't deserved it for a long time. I took a deep breath, feeling the first sparks of clarity flicker to life inside me. It was time for a new chapter. Not out of revenge, but out of respect, for myself, for my work, for everything they had taken for granted. Because when you spend 17 years quietly building a kingdom, you know exactly where every hidden door, secret tunnel, and weakness lies. And Wednesday was going to be very, very interesting. You can always feel it when the tide turns against you. It's not usually loud. It's not a slam of doors or a shout across the hallway. It's quieter than that, like a conversation that stops the moment you enter a room. A meeting invite that never comes. A project reassigned without explanation. That slow, silent erasure had started months before they officially let me go. First, it was the access changes. Little by little, they stripped away permissions I had held for years, hiding it behind IT restructures. Then came the meetings I wasn't invited to, the system upgrades they said they no longer needed my input for. At first, I told myself it was natural. Companies grow. New blood comes in. Maybe they just needed fresh eyes, like Daniel liked to say in his endless buzzword-filled speeches. But then came the new consultant. Jason Phillips, shiny resume, sharp suit, fast talker. He wasn't there to help. He was there to replace. They thought they were being clever, bringing him in under the guise of advisory services. But I knew better. I saw the server logs, the permission requests, the system audits with my name written between the lines. They weren't planning an evolution. They were planning a coup. The saddest part wasn't that they wanted me gone. It was how easily they forgot the nights I slept on the server room floor, the weekends I missed with my family to keep their systems running. The loyalty I gave without ever asking for anything in return. But betrayal, real betrayal, doesn't just sting. It clarifies. It strips away the illusions, leaving behind a truth so sharp and undeniable you can never unsee it again. Lesson learned. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And so I packed my box, walked out of that building, and quietly made a promise to myself. They thought firing me would be the end of the story. They had no idea, it was only the beginning. When you've spent years building a fortress, you don't panic when the gate closes behind you. You just find the secret door you build yourself, quietly, carefully, for exactly moments like this. While Meridian celebrated my departure, assuming I was just another forgotten name in their HR files, I sat at home, planning. I didn't rant on social media. I didn't send angry emails. I didn't storm the building demanding justice. I simply opened a folder, one I'd kept updated for over a decade, full of detailed system diagrams, access logs, financial trails, and private audit records. Not stolen data. Not secrets. Just evidence that, by policy, I had been asked to safeguard. And buried deep inside that evidence was something that changed everything. A string of payments to a fake vendor, Apex Solutions Group, siphoning millions from Meridian's books. At first, the transaction seemed small. Barely noticeable against the giant backdrop of corporate spending. But month after month, year after year, the numbers added up, and the patterns became impossible to ignore. The same CFO who had smiled at me during holiday parties was the architect. The same boss who talked about efficiency and teamwork was covering it up. The silence they demanded from me when they fired me? That became my shield. Because here's a truth most people never learn until it's too late. When you're quiet, they forget you're still watching. And when you're still watching, you hold all the power. So, I decided. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't fight. I would wait. I would gather. And when the time was right, I would let their own actions expose them. Because sometimes the best moves are the ones nobody sees, until it's far too late to stop them. And Wednesday, board meeting day, was coming. The morning of the board meeting, the city felt different. Maybe it was just me, sitting in my car across from the Meridian headquarters, coffee cooling untouched in the cup holder, but it felt like something big was about to shift. I wasn't there to barge in. I wasn't there to demand justice. I was there to nudge the first domino. At exactly 9:15 a.m., from a secure laptop connection, I sent a single email to Daniel, my former boss. Subject line, financial irregularities, urgent review required. No accusations. No threats. Just a careful summary of the suspicious payments to Apex Solutions Group, enough to terrify him, but not enough to reveal my full hand. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with his call. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the expected escalation. An email from HR, vaguely threatening legal action for violating confidentiality. They were scrambling, doing exactly what people do when they know they've been caught but hope to scare the problem into disappearing. I smiled to myself. They still thought this was personal. They still thought this was about me being bitter. They didn't understand. This wasn't personal. This was structural. It was about the cracks they had built into the very foundation of the company, thinking no one would ever notice. By noon, I had retrieved the old security audit files from a backup safe deposit box, documents showing who approved access to the financial systems, and when. It wasn't just Brian, the CFO. It wasn't just Daniel. The web stretched wider than I thought. Consultants, fake vendors, budget reallocations that made no sense on paper but made perfect sense to anyone who knew where to look. By the time the board meeting began at 1 p.m., my second move was already in play. A scheduled email to every board member. No accusations. No insults. Just a simple, calm request. Before approving this quarter's bonuses, please review the attached financial audit. Attached was my full report. Facts. Figures. Connections. The quiet truth laid bare. By the time the board realized what they were looking at, the house of cards would already be trembling. And all I had to do was let gravity do the rest. By 2 p.m., the news was already rippling through the company. Stephen, the junior analyst I had mentored, texted me 2 simple words: "It's happening." The board meeting had barely started when people noticed the change. Executives being pulled into closed rooms. Security showing up at reception, not for visitors, but for internal matters. It wasn't a leak. It was a dam breaking. By 2:30 p.m., local news outlets picked up the scent. Meridian Technologies under internal investigation for financial misconduct. No names yet, but that would come soon enough. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed again, a number I recognized immediately. Patricia Graves, Meridian's general counsel. I answered this one. "Mr. Wilson," she began, measured and cautious. "We'd appreciate your cooperation during this sensitive time." "I've already cooperated," I replied calmly. "Everything you need is in the report." There was a beat of silence before she said, almost too politely, "We're taking this extremely seriously. Several executives have been placed on immediate leave pending further investigation." Translation: Brian, Daniel, and Jason were no longer running the show. Meanwhile, forensic accountants had already started poring through the records. And the deeper they looked, the worse it got. $5.2 million. That was the preliminary estimate of what had been siphoned away through the fake vendor schemes. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the betrayal. The way they had gambled with people's careers, reputations, and trust, thinking no one would ever look closely enough to notice. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need a confrontation. I just let their own arrogance collapse around them. By the time the sun set that day, news crews were parked outside Meridian's headquarters. Reporters were asking questions no PR statement could easily answer. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee as twilight deepened outside, feeling not vindictive, not triumphant. Just at peace. Justice didn't always come loudly. Sometimes, it came with a soft click of a send button, and the patience to let the truth do what it always does. Expose everything. The following morning, my old flip calendar, the one I'd stubbornly kept on my desk all those years, showed a blank page. No meetings. No deadlines. Just open space. Until my phone rang. It wasn't another reporter or lawyer this time. It was Robert Chen, the board member who had quietly helped steer the company through crisis before. "Jake," he said after a long pause, "we owe you more than thanks." He told me the full board had met late into the night, combing through my evidence, unraveling the network of fraud. They weren't just angry, they were embarrassed. The executives they had trusted had sold them a lie. And the only person who had truly protected the company was the one they had pushed out the door. "We want you to come back," Robert said. "Not to your old desk. Not to the same broken system." They were creating a new position, Chief Information Security Officer. Direct access to the board. Independent budget. Veto authority on any tech-related financial decisions. Real power to protect what mattered. I sat back, staring at the ceiling for a moment. There was something bittersweet about it. This idea that the place which had discarded me was now asking me to help rebuild it. Andrea found me an hour later still sitting with the phone in my hand. "You don't have to say yes," she said gently, sensing the storm inside me. And she was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about deciding what kind of legacy I wanted to leave. A lesson or a grudge. A new standard or just a private victory. The next day, I walked back into that towering glass building, not as the quiet guy fixing servers, but as someone they finally saw. This time, it would be on my terms. The conference room was almost exactly as I remembered it, polished wood, floor-to-ceiling windows, and that familiar tension you could feel but not quite see. But this time, I wasn't just another name on the payroll. This time, I carried leverage the size of a freight train. Robert Chen and the interim CEO were already waiting when I entered. A few of the other board members joined via video, their faces serious. After a few polite words, they slid the offer across the table. Title: Chief Information Security Officer. Reporting line: direct to the board. Independent Budget Approval Authority. Full audit rights. It was a good offer, better than I ever expected, honestly. But I didn't pick up the pen just yet. Instead, I opened my own folder. Inside was a simple, clear list, not demands, but conditions. Full transparency across all departments. Complete authority to halt any project that jeopardized security or integrity. Whistleblower protections extended to my entire future team. No non-compete clause if they ever decided to replace me again. The interim CEO's eyebrows lifted slightly as she read. "This is unprecedented," she said carefully. "No more unprecedented than executives embezzling $5 million, I replied, calm but firm. They got quiet after that. And I waited, not out of arrogance, but because for once in my career, I understood something simple but powerful. When you know your worth, you don't negotiate against yourself. At 11:47 a.m., the board called a short recess. By noon, they came back. "We accept," Robert said, smiling just a little. "No changes." I signed the papers in steady, deliberate strokes. Not because I needed the validation, but because I wanted to rebuild something better. Stronger. Safer. The kind of structure that would outlast people like Daniel, Brian, or anyone else who thought loyalty was a weakness. Walking out of that room, Andrea waiting in the lobby with a quiet, proud smile, I felt it settle deep in my chest. This wasn't just about getting a better title or a nicer office. It was about finally building something unbreakable. On my terms. The first morning in my new office felt surreal. A corner suite overlooking the Columbus skyline, the same city, the same company, but somehow, everything had changed. The door still had that faint mechanical squeak when it opened. The coffee still smelled too burnt. The servers still hummed in the background, steady and reliable. But the feeling inside me? It was different. This time, I wasn't the invisible man in the corner, patching holes no one else noticed. This time, I was here because of what I knew, not in spite of it. First order of business, rebuilding the IT department the right way. I called Stephen into my office, the same young analyst who had warned me when the walls were closing in. He looked nervous at first, like he was still waiting for the old Meridian to resurface. Instead, I slid an offer letter across the desk. Director of IT Operations. Full trust. Full authority to build his team. His eyes widened. "Are you serious?" he asked. "Dead serious," I said, smiling. "I need people who care about getting it right, not just getting it done." Around us, things were already shifting. Security protocols tightened. Finance systems scrubbed and re-audited. Transparency was no longer just a buzzword, it was policy. Some folks couldn't adapt and chose to leave. Others thrived with the change, stepping into roles they'd never been given the chance to before. We built a culture where loyalty wasn't assumed, it was earned, every day, through actions. Where questions weren't punished, they were expected. Where watching each other's backs wasn't a favor, it was the job. And in that slow, steady rebuilding, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, the best way to fix a broken system isn't to fight for a seat at the old table. It's to build a better one entirely. A table where everyone knew they had a voice. A table that couldn't be toppled by greed, or shortcuts, or betrayal. And as I watched the first quarterly results roll in, security incidents down 78%, client satisfaction up 34%, I knew this was just the beginning. The new Meridian wasn't perfect. But it was honest. And it was ours. 6 months later, I stood by the window of my office, watching the first snow of winter dust the city below. It felt like a lifetime ago that I'd walked out of this building with a single box and no goodbyes. Now, I held in my hand a performance report signed unanimously by the board, praising not just recovery, but transformation. Across the hall, Stephen was leading a training session for new hires. Downstairs, a team of analysts was preparing for a security audit, this time initiated internally, not forced by scandal. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it was solid. And it was built to last. As I sipped my coffee, Andrea texted. "Proud of you. Dinner at 7? Let's celebrate a quiet victory." I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't come from winning over others, but from winning back yourself. Looking back, it wasn't the firing that defined me. It wasn't even the revenge. It was what came after, the decision to rebuild not out of bitterness, but out of belief. Belief that integrity still mattered. That quiet work, done right, would outlast noise and politics every time. The real victory wasn't the new title, or the larger office, or even the public recognition. It was the team we were building. The trust we were restoring. The future we were quietly shaping, one honest decision at a time. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this. Sometimes the people the world overlooks, the steady ones, the quiet ones, are the ones who end up building the strongest empires. Because while others chase headlines and shortcuts, we build foundations. And foundations? They stand. Always. In the end, this wasn't just a story about being wronged, it was a lesson about resilience, integrity, and silent strength. Sometimes, the world may overlook your loyalty and effort, but real value isn't defined by titles or recognition, it's built quietly, over time, and it outlasts shortcuts. I believe every setback is a setup for something stronger, if you stay true to who you are. If today you feel invisible, undervalued, or overlooked, don't lose heart. Your quiet perseverance might just be building an empire no one sees yet. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment your biggest takeaway, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories that remind us. Success isn't about being the loudest in the room, it's about building something that lasts. Your journey matters. And it's just getting started.